Here we go. Hello, everyone. I am that Weems guy, and Tiffany Johnson has called this episode to order and told us to quit all of our nonsense in the pre-show and to get in here and get busy because she's got stuff to do. So on tonight's episode, well, first I got to do this. B27. B27. Somebody send up me a podcast bingo because Tiffany Johnson is finally here on that Weems guy. And only it took 6 invitations to get her here.
No, it took
but she's
one.
Here. No. No. You have been invited multiple times.
Okay.
In person and in writing.
I won't fight you on your own show, Lee.
All right. And also, Aqil Qadir is here. Hello, Aqil.
What's up, everybody?
So, all right. Well, before we get started with what we're going to talk about, we're going to let them talk about themselves. So, Tiffany, tell everybody who you are, what you do.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Tiffany Johnson. I am an attorney. That's my day job, but in my copious amounts of spare time, and anybody who does this as a second occupation knows that that's a laughable notion. But in that spare time, I work with Aqil Qadir on classes for Citizens Safety Academy, which is his company. He'll tell you more about that. But I also work with Tom and Lynn Givens under the Rangemaster banner, along with Lee and Aqil and our other brothers, John and John.
Of the two Johns, which is your favorite?
Oh, I knew you were going to go there. I'm not answering that. Not answering that. No way. I love them both the same.
Hearn, it's okay to say that I'm Lynn's favorite when it comes down between me and you. just is. So, Aqil.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aqil Qadir, lead instructor at Citizens Safety Academy down here in Middle Tennessee, just south of Nashville, where with Tiffany Johnson and a host of other great instructors, we specialize in what we call Gateway Instruction. And amongst other things, this is what I do most of the time, actually. Now I'm fortunate that this is my full-time gig. Well, I still do some side government work as far as firearms instructing, but retired cop from Buffalo, New York. And glad to be not doing that anymore. It's a great job, but you know, it ran its course. So yeah, just here. And I am also a guy who follows, besides following Tiff around, I follow Tom around. Tom Givens, a Rangemaster, and this is indeed my Rangemaster family. And I'm glad Lee finally found fit to have me on his show. Thank you, Lee. I appreciate it.
Someone who has also been invited multiple times. You've actually been on one of the round robins, haven't you, Aqil? Okay, that must have been a primary secondary episode.
That was primary
secondary. I need to keep my own show straight. Sorry.
Ryan was on the round robin.
Yeah, Ryan was on one, and Ryan was wrong.
Was he?
Yes, he was. Ryan was wrong.
I can't wait to tell him.
Ryan made the statement that for a right-handed shooter, learning to shoot left-handed would be like what it's like for a new person learning how to shoot, to remind us of that. Well, I am, as circumstances have dictated, a left-handed shooter momentarily, and it is not like it was when I first learned how to shoot. It's just wrong.
Man, that was awesome.
It's just wrong. Now, I'm fine once the gun is in my hand, because I've done so much work with you guys have both attended my my crazy sadomasochism pistol class.
You should totally name it that.
Yeah, that's what it is. You've attended the class where we do everything support hand only, including draws, malfunction clearances, reloads, everything. So I'm comfortable having the gun in my left hand. It doesn't bother me at all, but it always starts out on the correct side. Well, right now it's on the wrong side. And Tom and I were having a phone call about this earlier today. I said, what I'm worried about is if I get a go signal in the real world, is my right hand going to go to where the gun usually is? And then I have to remember, oh, wait a minute, it's on the other side. and then I go to it. For those that aren't aware, I had minor hand surgery a week ago yesterday. Everything's fine. I just stiff and sore, and I have no grip strength whatsoever. And I can't depress the trigger without excruciating pain. And so I'm lefty for now. In a humorous note, one of the deputies came in today in my office and challenged me to a shooting match because he said, now that I'm shooting lefty, maybe he's got a chance, but I'll still whip him. It'll be fine.
How does your support hand feel? Whenever I do my support hand, it does feel the same. It still feels very weird. I mean, on the gun.
Yeah. When I have to shoot, most of the time I'd use the gun left-handed. I just use it one-handed because if my strong hand was working, why would it be the gun? I mean, why wouldn't it be the gun be in that hand? Although you can, brace across the wrist or something like that, get some support. I tend to, when I'm putting both hands on the gun, if I'm shooting left-handed, I tend to go what most people incorrectly call a weaver. A bent elbow on the support side, locked arm on the strong side, well, on the gun side at that point, and because that allows me to get the weapon over more in front of my dominant eye. That is not a weaver stance, even though everyone tells you that's weaver. Weaver is defined as isometric tension. It's not arm position. Okay. People that I know that called Jeff Cooper Jeff and Jack Weaver Jack independently have told me that. And so I'm going to believe them versus what I read on the internet. Although if you hear this on this podcast, it's got to be true.
Larry Mudgett told me that. Yeah.
Yeah. Larry's one of the guys. Larry and then Jerry McCown. It was the other. So it just feels wrong to have the gun on the left side, be getting out and be like trying to shoot support. I have not done any live fire since the surgery. So I don't know how recoil is going to affect having my right hand as a support hand on the gun. So I'll probably, if I end up doing anything, just going to get the gun in the left hand and just go that way. And I'm fine out to 10 or 12 yards that way and not running into any serious issues. So, well, all righty, Aqil, you used a term in your intro that we need to define, and that's gateway instruction. So Aqil, what is gateway instruction?
I don't know where I heard the term from. Tiff tries to attribute it to me, and I reject that. I heard it somewhere, and if whoever I heard it from is listening or sees this, please contact me so I can give due credit. What gateway instruction is for us is, we want it to be a ramp up. And I'm gonna let Tiff speak on this because he's way more eloquent than I am, but a ramp up to the, I want it to be a welcoming type environment for people who may or may not be already familiar with American gun culture. And so, where I've been at this thing since I was, a kid. So, I'm doing this since the 80s, and I remember, how it used to be, when people would come to, even my own, my dad was a firearms instructor. I used to help him. And I know how the culture was back then, even for him being, a Black firearms instructor at the time. And so something that me and Tiff talked about, a while ago, as far as, making this thing so that it's more inviting to people who may or may not already be familiar with, who didn't grow up hunting, who are from what we call gun culture 2.0. People who aren't, their only exposure to firearms is through movie, TV, video games, and, crime, or seeing crime on television and things like that. And being more welcoming to those people and focusing on the things that we think would make that experience rewarding, and actually to make them want to be a part of the Second Amendment culture. That some of the best people I know in the world are, gun people. And I think what guns has a big PR problem, and I'm hoping that what we do will help smooth that over and bring people in and make them want to be part of what we do. And I defer to Tiff because, like I said, she speaks a little more eloquently on this thing than I do. But it's I know she's going to say some nice things, and I don't want to get ahead of her. So please, Tiff, and then I'll speak after her again.
He makes me so uncomfortable doing that. First of all, I will totally double down on my claim that Aqil originated that term. If you do find out that that somebody else started that term, let me know, Ak. But until I learn otherwise, I'll keep saying that that's Aqil's term, because that's the first time I heard it, and it totally makes sense. We call it gateway instruction because it's like an on-ramp. So Ak was talking about giving people an entry point into the training community. Anybody who lives in a medium-sized to large-sized city is familiar with, like, when you have the interstate, the big highway, and then you have the little service road on the side. Well, for people who aren't in the training world but are curious about it, they're on that service road. And if they don't have a safe on-ramp, then their entrance into the training world is going to be kind of like somebody trying to drive up the side of the embankment to get on the highway. It's going to be rough. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be uncomfortable. It might be dangerous. So we want to provide a safe on-ramp where people can go so they get true beginner instruction. Because what Ox talked about a lot, and I agree with him, is that many people who advertise courses as beginner courses, they're not really beginner courses. When we say beginner, we mean suitable for someone who has never touched, never laid eyes on a gun, may be fearful of guns, may start in the negative territory, meaning they have misinformation about guns. And we have to wade, as instructors, we have to wade through all of that to get them to a good starting point first. And then we start with the very first instruction. We're not going to start with holster work. We're not going to start with mag dumps. We're not going to start with live fire. If you're doing all of that in your classes as the first thing that happens on the range, it's not a beginner class. So the gateway instruction part is really, it's a welcoming ground, like Ox said, and it is the entry point. We hope that folks will come through good gateway instructors who are sensitive to all of the complications and nuances attendant to true entry level instruction, who can address all of those issues and get people ready to move on to classes with a Lee Weems, a John Hearn, a John Murphy, a Tom Givens. But if you're new to it, you just got your permit the other day and you go to a Lee Weems class, Lee's going to take good care of you, but you're going to struggle a little bit. And so that's what Aqil and I, that's the lane where we operate. That's the service we want to provide to the training community.
All right. We're going to interrupt the show with a completely unrelated anecdote, because I just realized what shirt you're wearing.
Subtle, right?
Did you plan this?
I did. I was wondering how long it would take you to notice, and wondering if it would inspire an anecdote. And alas, it has.
Because I could just see the top of the letters at first, and you leaned back as you were talking, and I saw like the rest of the shirt. Like, that's the shirt. Tiffany described to the audience what the shirt's wearing for those that are getting the audio feed.
So if you're just on audio, my shirt says nah, N-A-H, period. And that's a quote. And the quote
doesn't say nah, it says nah.
And the quote is attributed to Rosa Parks, and it's dated 1955. That's my shirt.
So here's the anecdote. There is a restaurant in the county in which I work that we'll just politely describe the wait staff as eclectic. They're a little different for the county in which the restaurant happens to reside. And one morning, Tiffany and Aqil, they were in town, and we all met for breakfast. And you might notice that Tiffany and Aqil and I don't look alike.
Yeah, for those of you listening. Yeah,
for you listening, we don't look alike. And so we all meet at this restaurant because it has great breakfast. And we go and sit down. Well, Tiffany's wearing the Rosa Parks t-shirt, and I am in uniform. And this waitress comes up to take the order, and the first person she sees is Tiffany. She reads the shirt. She's like, "Oh, that's just such a wonderful shirt." And she looked over and sees me. She goes, and she didn't say it.
Because it was written all over her face.
She didn't have to. Yeah.
It was written all over his face. Like, what are you doing here with him?
Yep.
And it was just, I was so amused that
we cracked up laughing through the entire meal because bless her heart, she was so put out. She had no idea where to go. Here she thought she and I were having this sort of moment in, Liberty or something. And then she realizes that I am accompanied by Lee and Aq, which confused her even more. It was just hilarious. She had like on her forehead, what is this black chick with the Rosa Parks shirt on doing in here with this white cop? And Lee and I just found that to be hilarious because that's how we roll, baby. That's how we roll.
What was even funnier is when she went to the kitchen and got the other staff, and like they were coming at the door, and she was like pointing out there. Yeah. And you can see them like whispering, it's like they're together. What's the
So Lee said this was an unrelated anecdote, but I'm going to circle us back to Gateway Instruction because this is exactly the point that Aq was making earlier, which is to say the training industry is comprised of some of the most welcoming people that I've ever met in my life. And it's much more diverse than a lot of people on the inside and on the outside give it credit for. And so it's funny to have experiences like that where, honestly, let me just be real. I'm not sure how likely it is that I would consider Lee a brother, a member of my family, if it weren't for the training community. If it guns are what brought me to Lee. And it is such a catalyst for networking and for getting beyond, the book cover and learning more about people's true nature and true self, that's why I feel like I owe so much to the training community, because it really has enriched my life. And I was a very, very sheltered person before I took a leap of faith and took my first gun class. And it's through that experience and all of the different branches, all the different highways and bridges and tributaries and different lands and areas and zones that I was able to get to as a result of that first on-ramp. All of that has really just turned me into a different person, and I dare say saved my life in more ways than not. So it's why I have such an affinity for Gateway Instruction and why I absolutely love teaching brand new shooters, because I'm so excited to see the look on their face when they realize how much more is out there for them to learn and experience and be exposed to.
Aqil, did you see how artfully she got us back on track when we were trying to do
she's a master at it. Yes, sir. That's it. Imagine I'm with her all the time.
I'm done.
When I know. Yeah.
I suppose that there's an off chance that we could have eventually met through academia. But other than that, maybe. I don't, and that would be like a crazy off chance.
Yeah.
But I don't know how otherwise.
Yeah, that's true.
And I have to explain to friends of mine who aren't, where I'm from, Western New York, there's no gun culture per se. It's very low-key, surreptitious. Tiff went back with me once and she couldn't believe it, just how, there's no ranges. We had to shoot in a Masonic hall and we had to use special ammo and, it was a leap for me when I left the first time I went to go train out of Buffalo and went somewhere and came back and was telling my friends what wonderful people I met. A lot of them didn't believe it. Until it took me years to get some of them to finally come out and start trying to take classes and, go into places and coming out of their comfort zone, because there's a narrative that different types of people aren't welcome.
Right.
And I'm not sure exactly where it comes from, but that I know that that's pervasive. And so me and Tiff and people like us feel like it's our duty to, kind of poke through that and get people to cross those lines. And a lot of instructors are, most firearms instructors that I run to are well-meaning, even if they're crappy instructors. They mean well, but I don't think most of us really understand just how important and just how pivotal your first firearms instructor is.
Absolutely.
And if it's not done right, not only can you make, it can be little things like, anxiety inducing a deep flinch, all the way to completely turning somebody away from, from Second Amendment cause and from their own personal protection, and so, it was funny because, when I went to Larry Mudge's last year, and did you get all those 8 pages of pre-course reading that he had? And I remember, reflecting as I was reading on all the stuff he wanted you to do before his class, and remember how he was about, even how he was about, if you have trained with anybody else, he's not, he doesn't want, deal with you too much, only because he knows that he has to undo a lot of bad habits. And, why do most instructors say things like, hey, I'd rather have a person who has no experience than the guy who's, had been shooting guns all his life? Why? It's because you got to undo bad habits sometimes, and bad experiences, and sometimes, like I said, as far as making people, hurting their feelings and turning them off, and I learned after a while that, gateway instruction, I couldn't understand why everybody wants to teach the advanced and intermediate stuff, because, if you get out and start training, you start running into some of the same people over and over again in classes. And I wondered why, why we, more of us, didn't teach the gateway stuff. And then as I started doing it, Tiff helped me out a lot, and she was one of my first instructors and my mentors on this, is that, it's not easy. Yeah, it's not easy.
It's funny that you mentioned Larry Mudgett and the detailed instructions that he sent out for that class, because it actually touches on a topic that I wanted to get into. There was, unless you were just completely did not pay attention to the instructions, whatever, there was no chance that you were going to show up and not have what you needed, not understand protocols, not stuff in that class. I don't know, because it was spelled out. You will get this brand of dummy rounds. You will get, you will come with this type of holster. You infinitely, and of course that probably comes from 50 years of dealing with students, as he knows exactly everything that he needs to address. That document may have started out as a half page, and now it's grown to whatever many pages it was, because you can come back after each one, you add another paragraph to the page. Whereas one of the things that was difficult for me when I first opened my training business is, and I actually started out wanting to teach the newer students in BA. I didn't know the term then, but be a gateway guy. I used to say I want to be the best AA manager in baseball. I want to develop a core of students that when they go take the traveling guys, the instructor goes, that's one of Weems's in a positive way. That's what I wanted to accomplish. My marketplace isn't conducive to that. And then other things transpired, and I've moved into more of the traveling thing here. But coming from the law enforcement background, all of a sudden trying to teach groups of private citizens that were somewhere completely new to guns, there were things that I just assumed everyone knew.
And that's huge. Because most, I often quote Jeff Gonzalez, who said, you should teach several levels below where you operate, because there's so many things that you do that you don't even know that you're kind of doing. You know what I'm saying? Craig said it one time, Craig Douglas, what he said, it was in an interview, and he said, are you requiring or doing something you're not teaching? You know what I'm saying? Because you just assume that people know it. We find a lot of times, just think about the draw stroke. You know what I'm saying? And I've had instructors, wonderful, great instructors, come teach people, and basic level, according to them, was their basic level class. And in the class, I know that I'm having to go do short draw clinics because people aren't holstering carefully, because that wasn't gone over in the class. And I think a lot of times we assume, like you said, people have these things, and if they haven't, then, and if you really think about what goes into just all of the steps that go into, what do you say, like fire? You know what I'm saying? What does that mean? You know what I mean? And so in Gateway Instruction, we try to walk you through the trigger press, every step, so that way you understand all those tiny little steps that sometimes guys like us who've done it for a while. Lee, there was a lot of stuff that you were taught, and then there was a lot of stuff you picked up on your own from watching, and there's some autodidact stuff that went down because you're a pretty smart guy and things like that. And we can't assume that with other people, so that's why Larry Mudgett ends up with this, this super long thing to detail all this stuff. And for us, we do that, or we just say, hey, just come, we'll give you everything. You don't have to worry about it. We'll just provide it all. That way, hey, just wear clothes. Just come and wear clothes, and we'll take care of you there. We even got shirts up there that that got higher on the collar, because sometimes they show up with shirts that are cut. You know what I'm saying? So, but it's all to get people, on the way, so that when they get to your class, or like when you come here, like I encourage my students to go, and hopefully I prepared them well enough that they can get the most out of the class, as opposed to feeling like they're drinking out of a fire hose all the time. So
Tiffany,
Lee,
any comments you'd like to throw into that?
I mean, you
It
guys
was your turn. That was your turn to roll, Tiffany.
No, I mean, I said everything I would have said. I agree 1000%. And I think, I guess all I'll add to that is, it's really easy to assume that students know certain basic things, but it's also just as easy for instructors to assume that teaching beginners is the same as teaching anybody else. And nothing could be further from the truth. I often say that teaching beginners, true beginners, teaching actual Gateway stuff is, in many ways, a different skill set than teaching people who bring a certain level of knowledge and experience to the table. Even if it's only a couple of classes, just having that little tiny exposure to the culture, understanding things like when to load magazines, when is it safe to turn around on the line, all of those little more cultural aspects of being a part of the training community, new people don't have. They just don't have it. So knowing how to anticipate those knowledge gaps and knowing how not to judge your students for that and how to accommodate it is huge. And it's something that most instructors aren't used to having to do. So teaching Gateway is a skill set unto itself. It really is.
Especially if they're coming from military and law enforcement, where they, ramp you up to that stuff, Sam, and you get 40 hours, in a whole week where you do nothing but firearms, 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours a day, and most people don't get that, and so a lot of guys come in and they don't realize, a lot of them, we just don't, those of us who've been doing this for a while don't remember what it was like when we were new. Like you said, Ryan gave you, well, you go left-handed, it's kind of, sort of, and it feels weird, it feels wrong, but even with that, there's some things that we still know, but these people come out and they have no idea, and they're scared, they're apprehensive, they're scared of being embarrassed, they're scared that they're not going to be prepared. And one thing that I learned from Tiff early on was that it was, it's funny, it was all about the feelings, right? You know what I'm saying? And in so many ways. And now it's funny, because now that I'm looking at the, the law enforcement officers I train, and I'm realizing that, sometimes before a call, I got to line these guys and make them breathe. You know what I'm saying? And I watch there, we do instructor courses, and right before the instructor call, you can see guys, I have to talk people down and take them out for walks, and I'm like, man, even at this level, it's about the feels. You know what I'm saying? We all know what skill degrades under stress. What is that? That's feels. You know what I'm saying? That's a mind game. That's what's going on inside your head and your heart. And so, we a lot of instructors, like I said, they mean well, but they just don't understand all the things that are going on in people who aren't like them.
Well, just a simple example of something like that. Aqil, what would have happened in your academy class is if a cadet just all of a sudden realized there was something on the table back at the other end of the range that they needed, and just walked off the line to go get it.
Listen, you would get, I don't have to tell you. You know what I'm saying? You do that one time, and you can't just get mad and huff and walk off, jump in your car and drive away. Not unless you're going to leave your career, and yeah, I mean, you can, as an instructor, it's a lot, I found myself last week in Memphis running guys through quals, and I can say stuff to them. You know what I'm saying? And there's things that like I said, they'll do it once. How, a guy turns around with a gun in his hand. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that once.
The very first open enrollment class, pistol class that I taught through my company, I had like 7 students on the line, and like one of the guys on the line just all of a sudden like, I think I need to go to the bathroom. And just like, I'm getting ready to say, and he just turns around and walks off. And like, I moved because I was sure the lightning was fixing to strike.
Because
and
he
I
didn't know that he couldn't do that.
Yeah. And I did not know, I didn't go to a paramilitary police academy. I went to really, kind of adult education camp, police academy. Right. But even in the environment that I was in, my gosh, if somebody would have just walked off the line, the hell that would have erupted. It was just like, and seriously, when that guy turned and walked off, I was like, oh my gosh, the lightning is fixing to strike them out too close. And so then it's like, everybody gather around. We don't just turn and walk off.
Walk off
in the middle of a thing. And so that became, I guess, another paragraph on my document.
Exactly. Yep.
That's exactly what we're getting at. It's a great example, because if you're teaching Gateway students, your safety brief is going to be completely different than if you're teaching advanced students. You have to say things that should go without saying if you're teaching Gateway students, because they've never heard it before. It never occurred to them before. So it brings up another interesting point about Gateway instruction. Obviously, if you have potentially a line full of brand new students, then your acceptable student teacher ratio is going to go down, and the importance of good quality skilled AIs, assistant instructors, is going to go up. So this is another reason why Aqil and I developed our AI program. We still haven't found any comparable curriculum out there that's specifically designed for AIs. And in our case, specifically AIs who are working Gateway lines. So you have to, to go back to your example, if it's a Tom Gibbons class or a John Murphy class or a Lee Weems class, and somebody turns around and walks off the line, they're gonna have a bad day, and rightfully so. In a Gateway class, number one, we've covered that extensively in the safety briefing, which would not be necessary shouldn't be necessary in a more advanced class. Number two, we've got enough personnel, we call it coverage. We've got enough eyes on the line and enough pre-class training for our AIs to where you read body language and intercept somebody that's about to come off the line. So they will not have taken more than a half a step before somebody's laid hands on it. In our AI program, we even teach you how to do that. There's a difference between intercepting somebody with your fingertips versus intercepting them with the palm of your hand. All of that goes back to what Aqil was saying earlier about feels. You communicate a very different message when you lay fingertips on versus palm of your hand. And then you've got all kinds of social constraints that factor in. It gets pretty technical and pretty complicated. And we've trained people in our instructor program who go through the whole program and end up saying, you know what, this is I can't deal with all this. It's too touchy feely. It's too lovey dovey. I don't have time for all of this. Let's just go shoot. And, at first me and Aqil were like, well, that blows. You got a wrong attitude. But the more we thought about it, we were like, actually, that's good discovery to arrive upon in an instructor development course. If you can go through our course and determine that Gateway instruction is not for you because you don't feel like being bothered with all of this other non-shooting type stuff that's necessary, that's great. That is, we absolutely love that, because what that means is you'll take your talents and apply them where they are better suited, which is with more experienced shooters. There, you can probably do a world of good. And then the folks who are more interested in all of the other aspects that inundate Gateway instruction can do the Gateway teaching. So that's why I think it's so critical that people understand it's apples to oranges. It's not the same thing.
Tiffany, I can hear the keystrokes of the people typing the YouTube comment or sending me the email right now. I want you to know what the difference is between fingertips and a palm of the hand. So you've got to answer that.
Well, if you want to know, you can sign up for our AI class. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I won't go into a whole lot of detail, but basically when you're working with Gateway students who have emotional factors that are affecting all of their learning experiences, you have to make sure that you are communicating in such a way that is welcoming, accommodating, and is not adversarial or intimidating. For example, there's a difference between pointing someone out with an open hand and pointing someone out with a point. One is accusatory and the other is inviting. Tom doesn't give a crap about any of that, as he shouldn't. He doesn't have time to deal with any of that with the content that he's teaching. But at the Gateway level, something as nuanced and seemingly insignificant as that can make all the difference in terms of whether a student continues to invest in what it is we're selling, or if a student decides subconsciously or otherwise that these people are condescending to me, they think they're better than me, they're trying to tell me how to be a grown-up when I've been a grown-up longer than they have, and I came to the wrong place, and these people can't teach me anything. Even if a person doesn't realize that's the conclusion they've made, that's going to affect their entire experience for the rest of the class, assuming they even stay, because that's the other thing that we all know about open enrollment is they can get up and walk out. So yeah, open palm versus fingertips, one is more startling than the other. You can spread out the pressure points if you use a palm as opposed to fingertips. There's a whole lot of stuff that we could talk about there, but I won't bore y'all with all that.
and it really does matter, because I lost my point. Tiffany was so brilliant.
It was going to change your life.
Squirrel.
It's a shiny thing over there. But I mean, don't get me wrong, Lee. I'm not saying that knowing the difference between pressure points is going to make or break you as an instructor. I don't want anybody to take away from that I'm heaping some kind of huge significance on that. That's just an example of some of the nuanced ways that you can strengthen your skills as a Gateway instructor, as opposed to what you might or might not need to do if you're teaching more advanced students. You have to be, you have to play a lot of different roles as a Gateway instructor. Go ahead, Aqil, before you forget.
I got it. Because the most important thing we're selling in these classes, and we want to get across in these classes, is that they have a good time. We all know that what is a person going to get really out of, as far as for example, defensive shooting skills out of an 8-hour class. We would all say, this is just the beginning of a journey, right? And the only way they're going to take the next step on that journey is if they're encouraged, they feel good about what they got, and they want to come back for more. And so we really have to take those things into consideration. Even guys who aren't with the whole touchy-feely thing, I tell them, just from a business standpoint, you know what I'm saying? If you want people, you want people to come back to your class and bring friends, people, come back with money and bring friends with money, be nice to them, you know what I'm saying? Take these things into consideration, because if they have a great time, they'll actually come back and leave. This has happened with you, I'm sure, most of us. This is how pivotal we are. You're walking in the mall and somebody walks up and, hey, and they're all happy to see you, and you can't remember who they are. And then they're telling their friend who they're with, this is my firearms instructor. I had such a great time in his class, and blah, 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 blah. And I talked to Tiff about it one night, and me and Tiff was explaining to me what burden I lifted off that person as far as this fear of firearms. And I don't know how long they had been wrestling with that. I don't know how many times they signed up for my class and then didn't come and take it, or they almost pushed the purchase button and changed their mind, because they were all of the fear that goes into that. And then here they come in, we're nice, we smile, listen, you're under our control, we're going to take care of you. Don't worry about nothing. You're going to be safe. You're going to enjoy, have a good time. I'm thinking about marketing my classes, and I'm talking to Clay Howell, shout out to Clay Howell, and he was like, Aqil, you do realize that buying these classes is an emotional act. People don't buy these classes because they it makes sense. I mean, if that was the case, then we probably walk and run and go to the gym and do all that kind of stuff too,
Yeah.
you know. We do this stuff because we enjoy it, you know, and so we
Yep.
need more, you know, Aqil, you need to put exclamation points in your ads and say it's going to be fun, you know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
that's why people come. Honestly, that's why we do it, and this is true.
Yeah. My father was, a career salesman. And the thing that he used to always beat into my head about sales was the cheapest advertising you can buy is a satisfied customer. The most expensive advertising you can buy is a dissatisfied customer.
Mhm.
And most of my local business grew from customers coming back to classes and bringing their friends with them back.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, I had for a while there, I had my classes were selling out to these same people time and time again. And finally, one of them kind of looked at me and said, what's going to happen to your business when we all don't come back for the same class 7 times? You know, something to that effect. And it got me to thinking, and I had to come up with a few other classes that were like, targeted more towards a gateway audience to try to draw some people in, and had to move location in the general area a couple of times to actually get
Mhm.
exposed to some new people.
Yeah.
Um,
That's important.
yeah. And Aqil, you hit on a couple of things. Emotion. If people come to the class and they're having a good time, that's when they're the most likely to sign up for an additional class. If your business is together enough that you have them together and to sell at that point. When I worked in sales, working my way through college, I worked in an electronics store. And this was back, oh my gosh, during VCR days and the like. If somebody bought a VCR, you are a failure as a salesman if you didn't pick up a package of blank video cassettes.
Mhm.
Everybody under the age of 40 has no idea what we're talking about. Video cassettes, and say, sir or ma'am, would you like to get a package of these as well? Oh, yes, thank you. Because once they made the emotional decision to buy, the dollar amount wasn't really the controlling factor at that point in
Mhm.
time. It was whether or not I make this investment at all was the important thing. And where I kind of want to go with that is, one is marketing to your client base for further on follow-up classes. But the other thing is that you can turn off students emotionally so well as on the cop side of things. I know people are going to show up to classes with a serviceable duty auto pistol and a serviceable holster. May not be the best choice, but it's going to be serviceable. Open enrollment, you don't have any idea what anybody's going to show up with. And if you tell them the gun that they inherited from their dead father or grandfather is not a suitable gun, they might not be emotionally able to accept that. Or my significant other went to the gun store and bought this gun for me to protect myself. Are you telling me that he's an idiot? Yes, ma'am, I am. Or yes, sir. By gosh, if you're a deputy sheriff and you show up with a Serpa, I am going to mercilessly torment you. But you can't do that in the open enrollment classes. So, Aqil, what thoughts do you have on any of that?
We do actually. We talk about that in our instructor course. It's best that they find out their own. It's best that bit of truth manifests on their lips and in their minds. I remember me and Tiff were teaching at the Girl in the Gun conference last April, and there was a woman who was just practically yelling about how much she loved her SIG P3, the 238, or whatever, the little 1911 3080s.
Yeah.
How much she loved it. And I looked at Tiff and we like, that's a challenge. You know what I'm saying? Challenge accepted. Okay.
Yeah.
And all we did was get her on the line, get her through her exercises. And then as she was having problems, we explained gently this, that, the other, and then by the end of that, what was it, a half hour we get with those girls, or 2 hours, whatever it is we get with those girls?
Yes,
she was like, okay, I need another gun. And Tiff will explain to you how that's even deeper, and that resonates more within her than it is for me to say it.
Absolutely.
We often tell a story of a guy who actually brought a high point to class, and it was doing what high points do, and so I slid over halfway through and said, listen, I got this MMP9. It's laying here. We just want to try it out. Shoots the same ammo. Blah 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 blah. He said, yeah, I'll give it a try. Gives him an out, right? You know what I'm saying? He shoots it a few times. Now he's looking at it, you know what I'm saying? And by the end of the class, we're packing up and his gun is sitting on the bench in a plastic bag. That's where I brought it. So we rush it out to his vehicle. He grabs it and throws it in the back of the truck. This guy was, what was that gun again? It's how you do it. And, and we have our favorite slide or our favorite quote and all that we do is people won't remember what you said. They won't remember what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. And I can't stress that enough in that when you are, that you don't know, to you, that's just a junk high point. What you don't know is that his dead brother, willed that to him, or that was all that was left when his brother was killed or something like that. And so you have to be very, very careful about that. And if not, you can, like I said, from a financial standpoint, you can lose them as a customer. And, and then also, again, you can turn somebody away from the very thing that we're trying to do. Make it hard for them. So, these are the things we talk about, and then we consider, part of Gateway instruction is those type of things. And like I said, it's literally so much about, the feelings and because that's what they have, and feelings are markers for experiences. And we really want this to be the best experience for them. We want this, why it's the gateway, to our community. And we want to be welcoming. We want you to come and have a good time. And if you enjoy yourself, come on back and bring friends.
And we call it gear shaming, and there's no place for it in Gateway instruction. Your only parameter is safety. If somebody brings equipment that's unsafe, then you have to draw the line there as an instructor, regardless of whether it's a Gateway class or not. But that's a big reason why Aqil has an entire stockpile of guns that we can loan out to students if something happens with theirs, or if they don't have one. But the examples you guys gave about pistols having sentimental value and things like that, that's very common, but oftentimes it's not even that dramatic. A lot of times it's just someone has a terrible situation. They've suddenly been frightened into taking the leap to take a firearms class, and they don't have the budget for anything better than a Sky or, some really, really inexpensive gun, or some gun that they got, some used gun that they got somewhere. And they can't buy something else. And so we have to be really careful about gear shaming, because what happens with most gear shaming is that you're taking a whole lot of things for granted that you have no right to assume. And among those is the assumption that this person considered other options and made the rational choice to select this gun instead of all the other guns with all the same background information that you have. And the student has none of that, doesn't have the background information, doesn't have the options, doesn't have the luxury, frankly, to be able to choose a more reliable or, better manufactured firearm. So sometimes it's a matter of budget. Sometimes that student did make what he or she considered to be a very reasoned, deliberate, thought out decision. Like, we've had students who studied for months and read everything they could read on different guns, and then bought the one that they bought in preparation for your class. It's been an 8-month process for them to acquire what they needed to come take your class. And after looking at a bunch of different guns and reading and supposedly doing their homework, this is the one they picked. And now you're going to tell them it's trash? It's just not a good way to do business. And it's certainly not a good way to be a positive steward of our Second Amendment rights, in my opinion, if you would permit me editorializing a little bit there. So
editorialize away. Say something like, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say, I like what did Farnham say that time? He said, somebody asked him, what if somebody brings a gun to class? He said, praise God Almighty that we are in the country where they have the choice. Saying, and yeah. you know,
There you
we
go.
all started somewhere. I don't know anybody who carries the first gun they bought. I know when I think about the silver Taurus with pearl grips and gold trigger and hammer I had. I mean, nothing wrong with it. I mean, but I mean, you know, you move on from there, you know. But I remember when I think about it now, yeah, well, actually, I wish I had it, you know, again. But you know, but it's just we all begin somewhere, and don't give people a hard time about it. You know, I mean, look at it as an opportunity to help them along and to teach them.
You know, I might not pick a Smith & Wesson SD9 as my optimal pistol, or a Ruger American, or something in that price point and category. But I'm not who Ruger or Smith & Wesson is trying to sell that pistol to.
Right.
You know, because I'm going to take a pistol and in its lifetime, I'm going to put tens of thousands of rounds through it. And I know to change recoil springs at 5 rounds. I know to do some of the other stuff that has to be done to them. They're not trying to sell that gun to me. But something along those lines is going to be perfectly fine for someone that is coming to you and they're trying to make it to a one-day class with it. They might walk out a couple of times a year in the backyard or go to the range and put 50 rounds through the gun. And that's going to be fine. One of the things I've often kind of thought about doing, although I'm rapidly losing the anonymity to be able to do it, we'd be like sign up for other instructors' names under a fake name and show up with something like an SD9 or whatever and shoot the class just to mess with people's heads. Like, how did he do that good with that gun? It is because I think it would amuse me. But,
see, in an advanced or intermediate class, they would know the difference, including the instructor. In the basic class,
right.
Yeah.
And I'm drawing a complete blank on Stoger. Stoger's importing a pistol into the country right now that it's not what I would buy for a duty gun. I got a chance to put a magazine through it at a range up in Terre Haute. And for a nice handgun, I'd be perfectly fine with it.
I saw that thing. I think it's $200.
Yeah, it was like $300 and it had like a rebate on top of that.
Yeah.
That made it lower. And they had just gotten it into the range and they were so excited about it that we were passing our magazines around people to load them. So you'd be the next guy up to shoot it. Shot just as accurate as the clock that was on my hip. And so there was actually some things I really liked about it. Oddly enough, I went to our mutual friend Carrie's range down in San Antonio, Buck and Doe Mercantile, and they had one in the counter there, and the sales staff there was raving about it, that they can't keep them in the shelves. Okay, it's not a pistol that I would buy to take 2 classes to carry as my primary duty weapon and everything. But again, they're not trying to sell that gun to me. They're trying to sell that to the person who's made something has happened in their life, or they've made the choice that they need to have a firearm.
Yeah, I think when I hear about instructors gear shaming, especially Gateway students, it doesn't bother me as much with more advanced students. But when I hear about Gateway students getting gear shamed, it really kind of angers me. And you know, to your point, Lee, you have to think it's arrogant is what it is. You are being very self-centered if you just leap to the conclusion, you just take for granted, presuppose that everybody in the world has the exact same use for a firearm that you do. That's very, very self-centered. And it would be no different from me buying, I don't know, pots and pans from Family Dollar store, because that's how often I cook, you know. And if I met a professional chef who saw my pots and pans and that person was absolutely horrified and made me feel like a bad person because I have cheap pots and pans, that wouldn't sit well with most folks. But but those
this is older than me and either one of you put together. Quality American cast iron.
They work perfectly fine for my purposes. Now, can I get a better pan than the one I'm using? Of course I can. But, you know, I have to balance that investment decision, that expenditure of discretionary funds, along with all the other responsibilities in my life. And that's what people forget. I hear instructors say things all the time like, oh, your life depends on this. Yes, that's true. It could, but there are other things that my life actually depends on every day, like rent and food and clothing. And a lot of people just don't have the luxury of putting their firearm purchase at the top of their discretionary spending list. It's unfortunate. I wish they did, but if they don't, I can't judge them for that. And I have to, if I don't work with them, work with what resources they have available to them, then I'm not doing my job as a Gateway instructor.
That just inspired a thought. If I'm the instructor and I'm doing the demo with the $2,000 staccato with the $600 optic on top of it to a person who just showed up with a Taurus or something along those lines, because that's all they could afford. And their guns maybe not performing, they may have had a malfunction or two, and I'm over here burning it down with this $3,000 package. And they start asking questions about my gun. Am I going to emotionally turn them off? Are they going to leave defeated at that point? But,
which is why we encourage, why we encourage instructors, Gateway instructors, to use normal looking guns. You know what I'm saying? I mean, use a gun that the student, if I'm doing a demo in a basic class, I'm grabbing one of the students' guns if it's on the bench or something that just looks just like it. And our loaner guns are plain Jane guns. And when I see guys do that, I'm wondering, who is that for? Is that for the students or is that for you? If you're doing demos at full speed, not the speed you expect your students to do them at, is that for them or is that for you?
I know the answer.
What's your answer, Tiffany? And then I'll give mine.
That's totally for them. And it irks the heck out of me. Instructors who are stroking their own egos rather than giving their students the best possible learning experience.
Because
I'm going to say that's
that they're actually giving those people a reason to opt out and say, well, of course you can do that and I can't, because you got the Whiz Bang 3000. You got a $4,000 gun. I can't, I don't have that. This is all I have is this Scott.
Exactly.
I think that's going to depend on the students too, though.
Oh, sure. Yeah. All of this depends on the student for sure. I mean, even some of the really nuanced stuff that we're talking about, Gateway instructors need to be able to do. Not every entry-level student's going to need all that. In fact, at least half of our students don't need any of that, or, at least half of them don't care how you lay hands on them or whatever. It's not, it's not like all beginner students are the same. But at the Gateway level, what I think we need to focus on is keeping as many people in as possible. That's a big difference between entry-level instruction and higher level instruction. At the advanced level, you have almost the opposite goal. You actually want to weed out anybody who shouldn't be there for all kinds of reasons, including safety and including watering down or polluting or corrupting the instructional content that you brought for those advanced students and that they paid for. So yeah, you want to filter out the folks that aren't ready for that level of instruction. At the Gateway level, it's the opposite. We want to keep as many people in as possible. So we make allowances to the extent we can for folks who need the most, as long as that's not detracting from the experience of the people who don't need it. There's no skin off our back,
Yeah. Just one last thing with that equipment thing. When I'm teaching a class to, say, our deputy sheriffs at the sheriff's office, I don't carry the issued pistol. I carry a personally owned gun. When I go to teach a class, I ask all the personnel, I said, do you mind if I shoot with the gun that I'm carrying? Or do you want me to go get my issued pistol out of the truck? So I'm shooting the same thing you are. Because I'm not going to ask you to do anything that can only be done with the gun that I'm carrying. I'll go get the stock gun and do it with that. And usually like, just go ahead. We know you can do it. But those are people who I've worked with for years and they seem to do it. I think with newer students, everything, that's one thing we got to be cognizant about is If we're setting the price of admission so high that they don't think they can attain it, then that's going to be an emotional turnoff. And the days of being able to go into a gun store and spending $200 and walk out with a police trade-in K-frame are gone. They're over. And so we're going to have to accept the $300 Stoger to take that role. We're going to have to accept the Smith SD9 to take that role. Those type firearms. And Aqil, like you had a point.
No, I'm sorry. I was agreeing with you. I was saying you made a good point, that and again, I mean, you should also, as a gateway instructor, be able to operate all those different types of and be familiar with all the cheap pistols that are out there. And as they come through, and generally speaking, for most gateway classes, most of those guns will get through the class, and then you can find if you really think it's something that's going to not work for the person in some type of role you're thinking, then there's a way that you can suggest, or expose them. I find that better, is to expose them to better options, but don't, like I said, detract from what they have is counterproductive.
Two other points that I want to cover, and I'm going to say both of them so I don't forget the second one after we get to talking about the first one, one is I think it's Kathy Jackson made the point that the gateway students need the best instructors. And it's a frequent thing of, because we all help with, say, range master instructor courses or the like, and you'll see a student that's barely in like an instructor level course, that's their skills are barely up to the level of passing the instructor level course, and they'll almost apologize for it, make an excuse. It's okay, I only teach new students.
It's scary.
Because here's the thing, what the people learn first are going to be the stronger motor programs that they develop. And in a stress situation, the brain's going to go to the path of least resistance. They need to be taught exactly correctly from the get-go. Or else you are going to short circuit there, because they're going to be fighting motor programs unless they do just a sheer number of repetitions that they overcome that initial learning. And that's just not me talking. Dustin Solomon has written about that in one of his recent books. Oh gosh, now that I've said it, people are going to send me 18 emails. I want to know what the book was. Buy all of Dustin Solomon's books.
Building shooters. Is that one?
No, it's not building. He may go into that, but it's the new one that he just came out with. I haven't read it yet. Which, by the way, we have a reading assignment from Tom, and that's that book. You'll be finding out about that soon.
Got it.
Yeah. And then the other thing is that's become my just driving, burning issue in firearms instructor lately, is we try to fill students' heads with so much stuff because we want to tell them everything that we know. And we put so much information into their heads, or expose them to so much information, that they only accept so much of it gets through their filter. And then they've got all these competing things going on into their head that they have trouble putting it all together. Here it is, folks. Get the gun between you and the bad guy, press the trigger without moving the gun or misaligning the gun. That's it. That's what we need to be teaching people. We can refine it. We can refine it later on. Do all the other nuanced things. But at the beginning, if you teach them about this evil thing, this big bad wolf called recoil, you are setting them up for failure. Folks, you can shoot a 9mm pistol holding onto it with one finger. It's not going to fly away. Recoil is nothing. Quit damaging your students. Stop it.
Yeah, we have an entire module on the less is more concept, and trying to dispossess people of the notion that the more they teach in that first class, the better. And it usually comes from good intentions, right? Most people think that that's best because of some of the things that Carl Wren has written about, which is to say, people will take that first class and 95, 99, some ridiculous percentage of those folks will never take another training course. So it's stats like that that lead instructors to, in my opinion, mistakenly think that they're doing their students a favor by jamming as much as they can into that experience for fear that the student will never come back. So let me give them everything I can while I got them. And, it's just, it's one of the worst things you can do. Our friend, Dr. Sherman House said once in a class that we took with him that something along the lines of the best way for me to teach you nothing is to try to teach you everything. Later, I learned that he heard that from the late, great James Yeager, rest his soul. And I couldn't agree with that sentiment more. I really do. I mean, Aqil and I have taught 4-hour blocks where we fire 10 rounds. I mean,
They loved it.
Yes, exactly. And, that's how you sink the hook. The one of the best ways to ensure that people don't come back is to leave them with the underlying impression that I don't have the capacity to process all this information. I'm just not qualified. I can't do this. I need to be better able to remember all this stuff. This is not for me. And by trying to teach them everything in a really short time span, that's what they're going to walk away with. They're not going to remember anything you try to teach them. All they're going to remember is that they can't remember anything.
Kathy Jackson changed my life with that quote. And I've been trying to catch up with her to tell her thank you for that. So Kathy, if you happen to watch this, thank you, because she really did. Less is more, do more with less. I remember there was didn't you and John Hearn talk about, Lee, didn't you and John Hearn talk about, do we shoot too much? And
Yeah.
Yes, less shooting, far more dry work. The students like that more. They do.
Yeah.
And as you sitting there pouring, as you sitting there telling them, this is, please, everybody don't take this the wrong way, shoulders, square with the target, get your body weight forward, center of gravity forward, 1 foot slightly back, balls on your feet, toes grabbing the ground. When you do all that, through all of those fundamentals, you build up all that anticipation, and then you wonder why, when the gun goes bang, there's this huge flinch. And I love what you said about the recoil thing. I was listening to George Harris not too long ago. He was saying, he used the term push. And these are the things that go into the gateway instruction. It's terms like that this is why we tell, what do we say, Tiff? No, it's not an explosion happens in the cartridge. It's what? Expanding gases push the bullet down the barrel. And it seems like a small thing, but when you add that up over an 8-hour course, over 6 hours, and say, all right, let's go out here and hold on to a firecracker.
Yeah,
for sure.
Aqil, may I use you as an example here?
Please.
Folks, Aqil is a very well-studied firearms student. Aqil recently came to one of my classes, and we were shooting a drill in which we were shooting into a 3-inch circle that originated by Dave Spalding, called the orange dot drill. And Aqil was pulling some shots low. Hey, Aqil, you're good at this. What are you doing? And what were you doing, Aqil? Over gripping the gun.
Over gripping.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's like, man, I'm really trying to clamp down on my grip to do the whatever.
Trying something new.
Aqil, are you scared of the gun? No, I know you're not. You're worried about this big bad wolf recoil in this magic number split time. And what's more important, making the hits or missing fast? Obviously, making the hits faster is probably better under most circumstances, but missing is always wrong.
And just to piggyback off of that a little bit, to take it back to gateway instruction in particular, if you are bringing speed into your classes at the gateway level, you're doing it wrong. That is not an entry level factor. So if you've got students who are shooting faster than others, fine. I'm not saying slow them down, unless of course they're missing, like Lee was saying. But I see these quote unquote entry level classes where they're whipping out timers and I'm just like, this is not that. There's nothing wrong with that. I love timers. That's great. but don't call it an entry-level class if you are introducing the additional factor of speed into any part of your instruction. Speed is not an entry-level concept. Cadence is, speed is not. Very different.
Tiff changed my life. One day we were riding and I asked her, remember I asked you about, I said, what did Tom teach you about speed? And she said, he taught me cadence. I was like, wow.
And to this day, I'm a slow shooter.
But accurate. But you're accurate. God, you're accurate. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, we're not discounting that stuff. It's just, you need, speed does matter. You know what I'm saying? It's just not in gateway stuff. And guys mean well. They mean well. They want to, it's like, we have to tell guys, okay, we show them targets and we go, what would you tell this student? And they're like, oh, they got to fix this. They got to fix that. They got to fix this. They got to fix that. And we're like, no, that looks hard to me. You know what I'm saying? Because what we're trying to do in entry-level classes, more than even critique that, is make them have a good time so that they can come back. And guess what? We've got a class where we work on that.
Yeah. And if we put all of this stuff out there at one time to a new student, are we making the end result appear attainable to them? Yeah,
No.
I think we can be doing a disservice to them, because I got to tell you, I went through Range Master Instructor class as did you guys. I picked up so much going through it the first time. Okay, but I also had thoughts on looking around. Yeah, I might can take Top Gun in this bunch. I'm trying to get my magazines loaded so I'm ready to go for the next drill. And sometimes my mind wasn't on what Tom was saying, presenting. As I began to assist him with classes, and I'm standing there on the line when everybody else is shooting, watching them, but I'm not having any pressure because I'm not having to perform. How much more stuff I picked up over the years of going through that stuff. I don't know how many times I've been to Range Master IDC, but I've learned something every time I go.
Every single time.
Every time.
Tiff has to yell at me to put my darn note phone down. So I'm constantly taking notes when I'm supposed to be AI, because every time I've been through that thing 10 times and I'll always hear something. I'm like, wow.
And it's for the fact everybody's got a filter on their brain, and we can only process so much incoming stuff. And at a certain point in time, that filter gets clogged and it's just not going to accept any more information. And for the person that goes to a lot of classes, like if I go to a class now, I spend all the money for a 2-day class, travel, hotel, everything else, and I pick up one nugget, I consider it a successful class. But for the gateway initial student, they are getting so much thrown at them, they can't process all that.
No. And they're not, you and I, we're adding to what we already know and making links and discovering other things and figuring out other ways and going, oh, they have no frame of reference. So it's just huge amount of stuff being dumped into their head. And a lot of, like I said, I don't know what we expect them to retain from all that. And my understanding of adult learning theory, that after a couple months,
they don't retain it.
30%,
Yeah.
And the calculus of learning for entry-level students in any craft, any occupation, is different from the calculus of learning at the advanced level, because it's not at the beginner level, it's not zero sum. In other words, it's not just that you put stuff in this container until it's full. But instead, at the beginner level, every time you put something in, it's taking up more space than just the amount of space needed for that bit of knowledge. It's taking up the space for that bit of knowledge, and also the space for the anxiety that comes with needing to remember that bit of knowledge, and also the space that's needed to deal with the anticipation of the next bit of knowledge, which is going to squash the first bit of knowledge and put something else out. So everything that you teach is taking up way more space in the brain than just the thing you're teaching. That's not the case with advanced level students, because they're just positioned differently with all the background knowledge that they bring to the table, and also the familiarity culturally, socially, politically. the anxiety level and the extra kind of emotional and psychological baggage that new students have to negotiate isn't as big a problem in advanced students. It is sometimes still an issue, don't get me wrong, but it's not as big of a factor. And I think a lot of instructors who aren't particularly skilled at gateway teaching take for granted that, well, they came here as clean slates. They've got, 3 cubic centimeters left in their brain, and I'm gonna fill it up with 3 cubic centimeters worth of stuff. No, it doesn't. It's not that simple.
There was an episode of Married with Children one time where Al Bundy is training Kelly, his airhead daughter. He's like preparing her for a trivia contest. And he's like making her learn all this stuff. He's like, I can fit so many facts into her brain that if I teach her one more thing, she's going to have to forget something to learn something new.
Yeah, exactly.
And then like on the way to the contest, and I maybe misremembering this part, somebody told her something new. And she forgot like one of the things Al had specifically prepped her on. That was like the question to win the whole thing. Think, if I got to pound all this in, we really should be layers. There are things that are absolute gotta haves. We got to have safe gun handling.
Absolutely.
No, we got to have that. We've got to be able to get the gun out of the holster and get it between us and the bad guy. We have to be able to press the trigger without misaligning the gun. Okay, those are the we gotta have them. Okay, then
not in a gateway class.
Yeah, then we got to start. Depends on.
It
is for my
now.
It depends. Okay now, I've heard about.
If you are doing,
if you're teaching holster,
if you're teaching holster work first, and you go over it thoroughly, and you make sure everybody does it properly, which was cool because in your class, what was the first thing you did? You did a marksmanship assessment, and then you watched us all draw the gun and reholster the gun, and mostly what? Reholster, right? I watched you draw, and then he stared at you reholster. See how you were doing.
And that's the part that people don't do. They'll call it an entry class, and they assume everybody either knows all of the technique of drawing and holstering, or they think, how hard could it be? You got a container, there's a thing in it, you get the thing out, you put the thing back in, which is I don't have to tell you guys what a horrible mistake that is. But I'm sorry to interrupt, Lee, but if you have to teach whatever it is that you're expecting your students to do.
All right, but I'm talking, get the gun between you and the bad guy. Okay, if it's on the nightstand, you still got to get it between you and the bad guy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If it's in your range bag and that's where it is, you still got to get it between you and the big scary thing.
Absolutely.
All right. So that's a indispensable, got to have it. In order to handle the gun, you have to access the gun.
Right.
Okay, that's got to happen. So doing that in a safe manner and safe gun handling, those are got to have them. And then I don't like to use basic and advanced. I just don't like that terminology. You have the undisposable, as Spalding would call them, the essentials. You got to have them, and then everything else is just layers on top of that.
What's the phrase that you use, Aq? There's the fundamentals, and then there's it's the fundamentals in context or with cognitive load or with.
As you add, there's fundamentals. Advanced are the fundamentals done quickly, on demand, under stress, adding context, adding the cognitive load, all that type of stuff that we add to it. But ultimately, like you said, it is just the basics, or as Dave Spalding would call the essentials, that you have to be able to do, and we just add different layers to it. We're talking defensive here. If we're talking using the gun, defensively, which we are all defensive instructors, but it's just adding the.
Lee, to your point though, I'm sure I'm sure everybody on this call has had that student in class who is a crack shot, but has awful gun handling. And you get nervous every time they handle the gun, regardless of what they're doing, reloading, holstering. And that is, to me, an example of somebody who was led astray at the gateway level, because what you're saying, Lee, is, is the fundamentals, the essentials, the must-haves. gun handling, and I don't mean just trigger finger discipline. Obviously, that's huge, but there's a lot more to safe gun handling than just that. But if you leave a class, an entry-level class, without at least a basic understanding of what the goal is of gun handling, then we failed as Gateway instructors.
Yeah. We keep talking about pistols. But let's talk about a Gateway shotgun class. If you don't teach the students how to unload the gun, you failed them.
Yep. Agree.
I've been to shotgun classes where at the end of the day, somebody walked up and said, "Hey, how do I unload this?"
Where they just go down to the firing line and D52 it.
You just right.
It doesn't happen in my classes, but I've been to other people's classes that it did, because in my shotgun class, we spend the first several hours loading and unloading the shotgun with dummy rounds. And so you know how to do all of that before we start doing live rounds.
Right. Our entry-level class for any of them is basically the demystification. And then after that, for example, our next level is gun handling and marksmanship, where we just, all those things that we take for granted, you've had to teach somebody new how to lock the slide back. That's not easy. You know, after that, I got my draw clinic, and I'm gonna tell you one of the biggest issues I have with that class. How do I get people? I'm gonna have to do a YouTube video, I guess. But, you know, I was looking at one of my old Tom's old DVDs. So, but how do you get people to even bring a quality holster? You know what I'm saying? I mean, you said earlier, you said when cops show up, you know that they're going to have at least a serviceable holster. We can't do that in open enrollment classes, you know. So back there in those cases up there are just holsters, you know what I'm saying, for dummy guns and things like that. So if somebody shows up and I don't have a holster for them, then I can provide a holster. I mean, or they don't have a holster that they bring in, like the sack or whatever, or something that doesn't work well. Then I have to run them through a class with possibly with a blue gun and a holster that I have for it. It's, you know, because they don't. These are those things that aren't taught, that me and you have learned from trial and error over the years, and have a box of holsters that are no good anymore, finding out what worked for us and what was good. But Gateway and students don't have that. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times when you talk about Gateway classes that involve holster work, I'm wondering, how do you provide the holsters, or do you tell them, okay, go buy a holster from here, or maybe do the Larry Mudgett thing, buy this holster, only this one. You know what I'm saying? You know, for whatever gun they may have. You know, that's one of the things that I've been wrestling with. I know Kyle Wren has like a wall of holsters and a wall of, you know, guns and everything. And I mean, I'm haven't been that as long as he has to have built that up yet, but it's something to think about.
And gets absolutely giddy when he gets to go get something out of one of those boxes to give to a student. you have made his month if he gets to go get something out of those boxes.
I took force with him last weekend. He was like a kid he bought so many boxes. He was just throwing stuff. Look what I got. Look what I got. It was cool.
They need something and I have it.
Love Kyle Wren, man. I love that guy. He's so passionate. Yeah, I love that.
He really is.
All the toys, man. All the toys.
So what about Gateway instructing have I failed to ask you about tonight?
I think
something that we just got to know, Tiffany, or we got to know of that has not come up in the discussion yet.
I can't think of anything.
Do you want to know about the new curriculum that Aqil has developed for Gateway instruction?
Yes, we're going to talk about the specifics of your class. Well, that was what I wanted. I was going to finish the discussion on Gateway discussion, and then we're going to talk about your specific class and how to find you and how to sign up for it.
I'm just messing with you.
Because hopefully people are making the emotional decision to sign up for the classroom.
I hope so.
You're gonna have a ball at our class. It's a world of fun. Just come. It doesn't matter what we're teaching. Just come have fun.
There you go.
And then I'm going to ask you both a very hard question. So, anything else on Gateway instruction in general as a topic that you would like to?
I do want to touch on one other thing, and that is ladies only training. I have changed. I've evolved. My opinion has evolved on this topic. And it was partly because I was being self-centered. I was doing the thing that I said a moment ago, bothers me. I used to think that it was silly for women to want to just train with women, because I grew up with brothers and male cousins. I was used to being around guys my whole life. I played football. I did not play with dolls. And anything that I ever had to do that involved all guys, I was just, it wasn't a thing for me. I was used to being the only girl. Doesn't mean it was easy. It just, being the only girl is not stressful for me. I did not appreciate how stressful that can be for some women. And honestly, it's none of my business why that is. So where I am now is we do offer ladies only courses in our Gateway instructional curriculum. And if a woman or a girl wants to take a class with other women and girls, then they'll sign up for that class. And I'll tell you, it's been our ladies only classes are among our most popular. Wouldn't you say, Ak?
Yes.
I used to rack my brain about why it should matter. But that's not the point. Whether or not it matters to me being in a co-ed class or not has literally nothing to do with whether or not it matters to the next person. So it shouldn't be an issue for me or a concern. If Aqil and I have decided that we want to be an on-ramp for folks who are outside of the training community to make their way into the training community, then we need to be offering as many possible pathways as we can. And if that includes ladies only training, then I'm fine with that. The asterisk that I would put on that for instructors from the instructor standpoint is, please do not think that ladies only training means you've got to train women differently than men. Yes, there are some differences, and you can, talk to people like Kathy Jackson and Vicky Farnham more about the nuances there. But in terms of the technical skills that you teach, there's not, in other words, don't teach a watered down version of your regular class to the ladies because it's a ladies class. Might you have to accommodate different mobility levels, different strength levels, different heights, body sizes, arm lengths, all those kind of length of fingers? Yeah, you're going to have to accommodate that, but women are built up differently from each other, just like they're built up differently from men, and just like men are built up differently from each other, from other men. So there really shouldn't be a whole lot of difference between your co-ed classes and your ladies only classes. Not saying there's no difference. Sure. I mean, we train mostly all of my training now is done with Ak, and he's seen me teach ladies only versus teaching co-eds. And, Ak, I don't know, you may want to chime in on this, but I think I have a little bit of a different attitude when I'm teaching ladies only, but it's not wildly different. And certainly the techniques that I teach aren't that different at all.
You do have to allow time for
delivery slightly
selfies.
different. Yeah, right. That the delivery is slightly different, but no, the skill, the techniques aren't. And if you think that you need so many different types of techniques to teach women, you need to get better as an instructor. Honestly, I mean, something that you said earlier, Lee, made me think about that Einstein quote: "If you can't explain it simply, then you don't understand it deep enough."
Yeah. I think it goes back to some of those things that we just assume people know.
Yeah.
And we all tend to teach kind of based on our own learning style, because we tend to teach or present, because there's a difference between teaching and presenting.
True.
For those of you coming to the Range Raster reunion in a month, guess what? That's one of your topics.
Nice.
In my hour and a half block, they got shortened to an hour by she who makes the schedule. But that one's going to make the cut. We tend to present material in the way that we want to hear it and the way we want to learn it. And, locking the slide to the rear. I had that conversation with Vicki Farnham. Miss Farnham, tell me what I need to know about teaching women. And that's the example that she used, was locking the slide to the rear. And she like gave a very detailed explanation of how you do it. And I'm sitting there thinking, if I do that, I'm going to be guilty of mansplaining. I can't do it that way. And I kind of held on to it stubbornly and everything. I have a sergeant that works with me who just happens to be a female, and she's not a female sergeant. She's a sergeant that's a female. And I walked into her office one day and said, hey, listen to these two. And I did them. She's, I like the one with all the detail better. So you wouldn't take that as me being condescending, because I do tend to come across as condescending sometimes. You wouldn't take that to, like me talking down to you, explaining it with all that. She goes, no, that actually made, sure, now I got to do that. And it's just, and so I tried it a couple other times with other audience, and they're like, yeah, we liked it, whatever. Now you deal with a bunch of guys. No, because guys are lunkhead. We just want to know the end result. We don't need all the other stuff.
Yeah. So Lee, you'll probably know where I'm going with this, but there's a concept in adult learning theory called, well, I think it applies to pedagogy as well, but called universal design for learning. There's this whole movement out there in academia now called UDL, and it is an outgrowth of the movement from the 90s and early 2000s under the ADA to make everything accessible to people with different learning abilities. But with UDL, what the goal is to just make all of your teaching designed in such a way that as many different people as possible can learn from it, as opposed to just taking your say your lecture that you speak aloud and transcribing it for the one person who may be hard of hearing in your class. Why not just offer all of these different and diverse delivery methods, generally speaking, in your class, regardless of whether you have someone there who's hard of hearing? Because why? You may get somebody who is not hard of hearing, but maybe is more of a verbal learner as opposed to a visual learner, or, whatever. And I guess the moral of the story is, without diving into the weeds about difference and otherness and disability and ability, the real moral of the story is that people are individuals, and every class that you get, every 8 people that you teach is going to be 8 different people, and they're all going to learn differently. They're all going to have strengths. They're all going to have weaknesses. So if you focus on designing your curriculum in such a way that you're accommodating as many different approaches to the material as possible, then that's really all we can ask for. I mean, don't overthink it, I guess is what I'm saying. Is it true that a lot of women process information differently than a lot of men? Sure, that's true. Is it true that women's bodies are built differently than men's bodies? Sure, that's true. But if I teach holstering in such a way that everybody understands you have to clear a visual path to the mouth of the holster, then that applies whether you're fat, skinny, got boobs, don't have boobs. So design universally, design your curriculum so that learners of all shapes, sizes, types, and persuasions can get the message, even if it means you have to repeat yourself sometimes. So maybe Lee will first explain in the simple way of racking the slide, and then he'll reiterate with the details that Vicki Farnham suggested. Well, now he's accommodating both. The people who keep it short and simple, they got that. The people who need the detail, they got that. It takes a little bit more time and a little bit more preparation sometimes, but especially if you're teaching at the gateway level, I can't tell you how much it pays off. It pays dividends, beyond measure. My 2 cents.
Yeah. What was the word you sent me one time? Sinahachi or something like that. You sent it to me and said, this word is now my favorite word describing you. It's like a person who teaches by telling stories or something like that.
I have no memory of this. I
You sent
think
it to,
you're
I have to,
mixing
I
me
have
up
to
with
look it
your
up.
other friend named Tiffany.
No, it was you. It was you.
There's
I
one
don't
Tiffany. Come
know.
on now.
Yeah, no,
I can't
it was
remember that.
you.
If you figure it out, let me know, because now I want to know what the word is.
Now I'm have to look, but it's you sent me the word, and so I'm going to teach by telling a story
Okay, great.
here right now. And this will also be something that gets discussed at the reunion, but I'll share it with the audience because it applies to this. John Herner and I went to a class through LSU on being a better instructor. And one of the things they hit on in that class was you tend to teach, present and design your materials in the way that you prefer to learn. Well, my PowerPoints are just to keep me on track when I'm telling a story. A lot of times it's just a picture of something, or it's a single word or a phrase that tells me this is what comes next. It's also designed in a way that people that are trying to conduct instructor espionage can't just reproduce my materials.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to have to go do the work. You can't just take a picture of my slides with a cell phone and then have my program. All right, you're going to have to go do work. All right, so that's how I present it. Well, I did this in the class, and I tell a story along with one of the pictures that's up on the slide, and student in the class, like, I just loved this lady. I just loved the story that you told. But I pictured it all as you were telling it and everything. She says, but there wasn't a lot of visual information on the slide. Would there be a handout or something that would have what the information about you, what you spoke about? Well, I don't do handouts because I don't like seeing them left on the tables and in the trash at class. But for that particular student, that would have been value to that student.
Right.
Yes. So do I do all that work as an instructor because one student out of a group may find value in it? Well, I probably should be if I'm wanting to be a good quality instructor.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just depends. We all have to weigh the ends with the means. We have to weigh our resources with the end result, and whether or not it's worth the cost in time and supplies and everything. But the goal is to do what you can within your own abilities and resources to accommodate as many students as possible. So, the question to go back to your anecdote, if it's no skin off your back to print off a one-page handout for everybody in the class, and you can do that without a huge expense of extra time that's not going to come back to you in any real way, then yeah, do it. Even if it means some are left on the table and some are in the garbage can. If, on the other hand, you're weighing whether or not to put together a 200-page booklet that certainly might help one student out of 10 in your class, that's a much bigger expense of time and money. And, the calculus is different there. So I only say that because I don't want anybody to take away from this that, you have to literally teach 10 separate classes if you've got 10 people in your enrollment. That's not it. But there are ways that you can efficiently make your class more accommodating for a varied set of learners without it sacrificing the quality of your instruction.
Aqil, any thoughts?
No.
You were supposed to come up with thoughts so I could search on my Facebook to find where Tiffany is.
Or you looking for what she sent you?
Because I remember I made a post about it, and I'm trying to find the.
But it also, I mean,
it.
the cool thing is if you're doing classes like that we described, and this is where good AIs come in too, because a lot of that extra stuff can come if necessary. Oh,
Tiffany, look on your screen.
I have zero memory of that. I honestly know. Why do you still have that?
It does say 2018, doesn't it?
October 12th. And the word is, I'll spell it SCNNACHIE. The post was Tiffany Johnson called me a Sinachi, however you say it. That reminds me of a story.
I don't even remember calling you that. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
now you're going to be that. I'm going to change your name to that in my phone now, Lee.
Yeah. Well, it was a story, so I remembered it. So what were
Well,
you saying up?
No, I was done. I was just saying that, having good AIs can also help. We all one of the things we teach our Gateway instructors is that I don't care how good you are, your class will be much better if you co-teach with somebody else, especially somebody who's different than you.
mhm,
Yep.
absolutely.
And what makes it even better, Tiffany, it's a Gaelic word. So hey,
Is it Gaelic? That's awesome.
Gaelic word.
Even
And the majority of
better.
my DNA is Gaelic.
See, she knew that.
So yeah.
I did. I totally knew that.
All right. So Weems is the Gaelic word for cave. So by definition, I am a caveman.
Wow.
Good to know.
All right. Yep. All right. So Tiffany,
Yes.
should someone have made the emotional decision to sign up for Gateway Instructor class from Citizen Safety Academy, how would they do it?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that, Lee. They could simply go to citizensafety.com and click on calendar, and they will see the class listed there. It's the end of October. What is it, 29 and 30? I think it's October 29 and 30 in Cincinnati. It's a 2-day class. And it's also on Eventbrite. So if you just go to citizensafety.eventbrite.com, that has all of our classes listed there. You can see a full course description. There's even a video there that Aqil and I recorded talking about more of what we're going to cover in the class. And it is a certification class. So we are issuing certificates for anybody who successfully completes the Gateway Instructor Skills course from Citizen Safety Academy. And it is going to be just that. It's not just your run-of-the-mill instructor class, but we're going to specifically focus on how to be an effective instructor for new shooters who have never touched a gun before.
Should someone already be a certified firearms instructor through another entity and then take this course as an add-on, or is this like an initial certification course?
Aqil, you want to take that one?
I would consider this more of an add-on. It could be, if we think it would suffice as an intro certification course, but I think that people who have some instruction and who have been instructors, who are instructors, and who have some instructional experience might get the most out of it, because they would also bring their experiences. And we hope this thing, part of us teaching these classes is also to network with other Gateway instructors and to learn from them and offer what we have, learn from them, and hopefully build a network of Gateway instructors that, it's kind of like the range master thing where what do? We get in a group and go, all right, who's in, Connecticut? What I'm saying? Who do we have in Connecticut? Because I know somebody in Connecticut who wants to. There was a lady who got on one of our guns one-on-one, and she was like, I'm out in the Pacific Northwest. And then we hooked her up at Rick Remington, and it was wonderful. What I'm saying? It's nice to have people like Rick and Tim Reedy and some of those people that we have around there. I know I can recommend for the, brand new person, my family member, whatever. There's people that are really good instructors, but I wouldn't send a new family member to them. But I can say, hey, if you are anywhere near San Antonio, go see Carl Wren, go see, Austin, go see Carl Wren. If you're near San Antonio, go see Tim Reedy. And I know that I can forget about it after that. Just call me after you have fun, because I know you're going to call me one day and say it was a great experience. Yeah. And we're hoping to build, something like that where, all over the country, people can take this and run with it.
All right. Well, one quick add-on to Gateway instructing. Folks, if I wasn't going to go there with this episode, but we're going to, because I don't like the fact that you two get pigeonholed into only teaching women or only teaching different cosmetically flavored Americans. I don't
That's
like
also cosmetically
flavored.
I love that.
You just mentioned you can send people to Tim Reedy and Rick Remington, and you don't have to worry about it. All right. Folks, if people sign up for a firearms class, they did not fill out a voter registration card to be a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant conservative Republican.
Amen. Say it one more time.
People that do you really want me to say it one more time?
Yes, repeat that. Yeah. It bears repeating.
Right. They didn't fill out a registration card, to be a white Anglo-Saxon, Protestant conservative Republican. Because guess what? Not all of those apply to me. So I'm not Anglo or Saxon. So, and I'm not a Republican. So it's not with a big R anyway. Yeah. Keep the political nonsense out of the classes.
Please.
Amen.
Do. Thank you.
Keep innuendo out of the classes.
Please do. Thank you.
It needs to be a welcoming, everybody, it's the right to self-preservation, I don't like defense, but self-protection is the human right. It's a human right. I don't care what the person's political persuasions are. They have a right to protect themselves against getting snatched up off the street, taken somewhere, and having the last little bit of their life being a brutal experience. That transcends every political boundary that we have. It transcends every gender boundary, every, diddling preference boundary, whatever. What are we doing this for?
Yeah, absolutely. It's irrelevant. It is irrelevant in your classes. They did not come to you to learn how to vote. They didn't come to you to learn how to love. They didn't come to you to learn how to dress. I mean, they didn't come to you to learn what kind of music they should play. They came to you to learn how to be safe, efficient, proficient, and ethical with a firearm. That's all you should teach them. Nothing more, nothing less.
All right. There you go. Any thought?
I mean, that was perfect.
Yeah.
It's absolutely perfect.
All right, then. Are you two ready for the hard question?
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Wait.
Oh, well, look at the time.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, it's so late. So can we make an announcement on Lee's show?
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
Lee, is that okay? All right. You see how Lee just said to do it, right? He's overruling you if you're gonna stop me out. But so in conjunction with our new Gateway certification course that we are teaching, CSA is finally going to have a patch. Well, we're going to have two patches, actually. Our CSA patch, which is the logo, and we're hoping that a lot of folks will wear that proudly. But in addition, we'll have a slightly more exclusive patch that is specifically for Gateway instructors. We've been designing it for over a year, and it's finally coming to fruition. And Aqil and I are going to use this patch to recognize people that we think truly shine in the lane of teaching brand new shooters. Doesn't mean that others aren't great instructors. They may be phenomenal instructors, but this patch is specifically for trainers of new shooters who are particularly adept at helping new shooters overcome their fears, overcome their hesitations, overcome whatever boundaries or obstacles they may face towards as far as entering the training community is concerned. And we're really, really looking forward to it. We haven't given any out yet, but the very first CSA Gateway Instructor patch does have a name on it already. We haven't informed that person yet, but we're looking forward to it. And we look forward to handing out many more of these patches as people start to shine as Gateway instructors. But it's, so you'll see, I guess this is radio, not television, but we decided to go with a West African Adinkra symbol called the Fahodie, I think is how you pronounce it, Fahodie. And it's basically like a stylized, it kind of looks like an X, but it's a symbol, it's an Adinkra symbol that literally means freedom or independence or emancipation. And we thought it fitting to use an African symbol since some of the earliest human fossils have been found in Africa. So we thought that that was a great a great acknowledgement of this idea of beginnings, right? The origins, and Gateway Instruction is very much an origin point. So the freedom symbol from these West African Adinkra symbols, it's part of a longer West African proverb that goes something like, freedom comes with responsibility. And so we thought it was a perfect fit for to recognize Gateway instructors, because on the one hand, if you're a Gateway instructor and you do your job well, you are freeing people. You really are. And I know that sounds very kind of cheesy and a little idealistic, but you're freeing them from their own misconceptions. You're freeing them from social constraints. You're freeing them from political constraints. You're freeing them from lack of knowledge, lack of exposure, lack of experience. And you are also teaching them that comes with responsibility, right? Just like you were saying earlier, Lee, you have to be a responsible steward of these rights, or else you're contributing to the chances that we may one day lose them. So there's a lot riding on Gateway Instruction, and there are a lot of patches out there. A lot of outfits have coins and patches and things like that, but we really wanted to design one that was specifically made for people who are seeing folks in the community who consider themselves outsiders, and are looking at those folks and saying, come on in, you're welcome, let's get started.
There you go. Well, now people have to take the class so they can get, have a shot at the patch. That's like the most important thing in the firearms industry, is you got to have the patch with the coin.
Very important, very important. That's right.
Right. All right. You tried to do that to distract me from asking you the tough question.
I did, yeah. You don't have to ask the tough question now. We should end on the patch, right? Everybody.
Well, yes, I do. Yes, I do, because Rob Garrett's going to text me after he listens or watches this episode.
Uh-oh.
Oh, Lord.
So you're offering an instructor certification. What authorizes you to do that?
I remember wondering about that. Do you have to be authorized by anybody to do that? I mean, we as second entry often, like we teach stuff that's authorized by the state, and we all think that it's usually not good anyway, but it has its uses. The interesting about this is that we taught this class. We offered it once before, and we didn't offer it as a certification, and seems like people. I kept getting asked, "Can you certify me in it?" You know what I'm saying? And so it was part marketing, but the other part was that we thought that we would create a community, kind of like with Tom, and he was the inspiration for it, and that when you find that there's something that's not being done the way we think it should be done, and if somebody were to do it better, we submit ourselves to it. Me and Tiff don't have any ego in this whatsoever. But in the meantime,
repeat that.
No ego. You know what I'm saying? We
no. About what you talked about, you see something that needs to be done, and nobody.
Oh yeah, you see. I mean, there's a gap. There's a need that needs to be filled. This is our attempt to help fill it. And we're not certifying anything other than that thing that we feel like we've got enough knowledge and experience to be considered, at least trying to touch, the level of now. I'm not even comfortable calling myself an expert, but somebody who works real hard at this, and this is an attempt to share that information with people, and again, grow a community. That's my answer. Tiff probably has something.
Tiffany?
If we don't police ourselves, somebody's going to police us eventually. Standards will be imposed on us either by our own hand or by fate, and by powers that be. I would like to keep that autonomy, and in order to make sure I am worthy of it, I have to hold myself to high standards. So your question is, do I need to be authorized to teach an instructor level course? I guess my answer is yes. I need to authorize myself. And the way I do that is by ensuring and double ensuring and triple and quadruple ensuring that I can meet and surpass my own standards. And those standards have to be high. I have to remove my ego from the entire situation, like Aqil said, and ask myself, do I have something of value to give back to the training community? And if I do I need to have some sort of documentation that legitimizes that in a way that is recorded and measurable? The answer to that is yes. And that is why we're offering a certification. We're not certifying people to be master instructors who can teach anything to anybody at any time. We're not certifying that people are expert instructors. All the certification does is confirm that you took this course of instruction, you met our standards, and we're certifying that you have the potential to be a good and effective Gateway instructor. Whether you actually realize that potential is completely up to you. You can give somebody a driver's license. That doesn't mean they're going to be a good driver. It just means that they met the standards to get the license. What they do after that on the road is up to them.
We can't make people instructors. All we can do is what? Show them a path. Show them a path. And you know, like you said, set a standard and show them a direction, and then continue to walk with them as far as we can together.
You know, 2 episodes prior to this one, we had a big panel on that. Was the whole episode was, at what point can a private entity go out on their own and start offering instructor certifications without some sort of other entity or body backing them up on that?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a really legitimate question that the training community needs to be asking themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say you look to Handy Mahmood's, one of his points in that episode was, okay, there was patrol rifle instructor courses until we had patrol rifles, and there was a need to develop a course to certify people to go out and teach patrol rifles. Same thing with red dot or pistol mounted optics. That's a big thing now. That was met by the private sector. That was not met by the government sector putting that out. Now, there are government sector employees for agencies that have gone through some of those private sector schools that are now trotting out an agency-backed instructor course, which I guarantee you go rip the label off of it and it's got the private sector's name on, they just wrote it on the top of it on the notebook or something, change some words and stuff here and there. But I can look at your course, knowing you two the way I know you. And what you're describing here tonight is you two saw a specific need within the industry and you developed curriculum for it. You two are the experts on this curriculum.
Right. This method. Yes.
Yeah. You're the experts on this curriculum and this particular portion in the industry. If you guys aren't going to teach it, who is? Who's the expert that's going to roll out the course?
Yeah. And, I completely sympathize with the worry that utterly unqualified people might go out and start teaching what they deem to be instructor level courses. That's a real fear, and it could be a poison for the training community. But, and maybe it's a little idealistic or even naive of me, but I have to believe that the market will right that ship. I know that capitalism is not perfect, and I know that the market is not perfect, but eventually people writ large, consumers as a body, weed out the worst of the worst. It's been true since before there was paper money. So yes, there are people out there who have bad information, who are succeeding by certain standards. But again, that's a market force unto itself. There are going to be people out there who buy cheap guns. That's a market. There are going to be people out there who want instructor level courses for how to teach advanced students. That's a market. And there are going to be people who need to teach beginner students. That too is a market. And, if I wanted someone to teach me how to teach beginners, I wouldn't go to other instructors who are teaching other things. So yeah, it would be really nice if we had a governing body that could set the standard and determine, anoint people as qualified or not qualified. And, there's a word for that historically. It's called monarchy. And it doesn't always work out well. It works out great when the governing body is
competent.
Good. Yeah.
Exactly.
But there's no guarantee that that'll ever be that. Larry Vickers tells a story about how once upon a time, the NRA didn't think that civilians had any business carrying firearms in holsters going about their everyday life. So if the NRA was our governing body, that was the only agency that could deem someone instructor worthy, how would that have affected us? So, I believe in competition. And yes, I think that people should have authority before they go out there selling their material as having value. But that authority is intrinsic. It comes from your own policing of yourself, your own standards applied to yourself. And if you choose not to do that and put out subpar material, then we'll see how the market handles that.
And the value that the market places on the credential as well. There are instructor certifications out there that I'm not going to take it because I don't see any value in it.
Right.
And there's some that aren't taken very serious by people, and that's as a result sometimes of the quality, the quality or lack of quality control thereof. So
the only reason I maintain an NRA instructor certification is because there are states that if I put my NRA number on a certificate that I issue, they honor it when nothing in the class has anything comes from that certification.
We offer NRA.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the biggest reasons why me and Tiff, I got away from NRA training, and it was, it was corny to me. And then me and Tiff one day started talking. We were like, wait a minute, there's thousands of instructors coming through that door, and we need to go over there and, be a good gateway instead of a gatekeeper, and keeping, and teach people. I mean, they're coming through anyway, as opposed to complaining about it. What are we going to do about it? So we both went to TC school and started offering, NRA instructor courses with our flavor, to get guys to hopefully, approach it in the way we do. And but as like I said, as opposed to complaining about it, we went, but that's why we did it. That's why we do it now.
And Tiffany, if I remember correctly, you are a training counselor with NRA?
NRA and USCCA.
Right. So you can certify instructors through the NRA and through the USCCA.
Yes.
So why can't you do that under your own name?
What's that?
So why can't you do that under your own name?
Oh, well, we can.
That's what that's
we are.
That's the argument that I'm making.
Yeah, exactly.
We're training counselors for several organizations, and it's like, but that's neither here nor there. The thing is like I said, we've developed a method. We don't know if anybody else who's doing anything quite like it, and anybody who's interested in it, we'd like to like them to come check us out.
All right. And I know you too well, and know your professional beliefs on this topic and other stuff related to firearms. And I know that you're not doing this as a way to flatter your ego or to try to, you're going to make money from it because people are going to come take the class because there's value in it. All right. Well, none of us are doing this for free.
No, and very few of us are getting rich either. So I mean,
right. Okay. Now here's the thing: it becomes an ultra successful class. There are going to be people that try to, maybe I should offer a Gateway Instructor Certification. Well, that's one of the things the market's going to have to bear.
Well, consider
So
it
I have to
flattery.
look and have to look at it. Okay, why should I go take Instructor Bob's Gateway Instructor Certification class instead of Tiffany and Aqil's Gateway Instructor Certification class? Okay, well, caveat emptor. Yeah,
exactly.
Draw your own conclusion. Now, here's what I'm going to look at: is did they take Tiffany and Aqil's class, or did they just put in their own label?
Right. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I know we're closing out. I'm sorry to drag this out, but it
Yeah.
reminds me of another point though, that Aqil,
Yeah.
a story. I can tell a story that hopefully has teachable moments. But
Well,
Aqil and I went through a phase where we were trying our best to not get priced out of the market, where we were trying to compete with folks who were grossly undercutting our price points. And finally, Aqil just said one day, you know what, I'm done. We're going to charge what our class is worth.
Yep.
And the people who want to take our class will take it. And the people who want the cheapest class they can find will take that. And that's fine. That's the beauty of freedom. You have those choices, just like John Farnham said. And sure enough, not only did we not lose any business over that, but we actually got more business and higher quality students. And so our experience as instructors was far enriched by us stopping competing with the really, really underpriced instructors out there. We just let, like you said, let the market, let the chips fall where they may. We're going to offer the best product that we can possibly offer. We're going to charge what we think it's worth, and we'll let the consumers decide where they want to take their business.
Yeah, I increased the fees for my classes by over 50% per student, and my enrollments went up. Because I kind of had that same point too, as I was wanting to be, like I said earlier, the best AA manager in baseball, and was wanting to try to reach a segment of the population and get it. But one, you got to have a feeder system into that. If you're hooked in with a gun store, like you guys, you're between two metro areas, and your state at the time required, a training class to get the license, the basic care license. Didn't have any of that here in Georgia, and I didn't have a lock in with the range. And so, okay, I've got to do something to attract people that want to come to a class, not that are coming to a class because they want to. And a little bit there was market perception of, well, this guy's charging less than what these other guys charge, so he's must not be as good. And then finally, I had some of my students, regular people's or clients, as Claude would teach me to say, staged an intervention after a class one day, and basically explained it to me how I would be increasing my prices because they had gone to some other instructors and came back and said there was more value over here. You're underselling yourself.
Yep.
I had a similar moment. And I had a conversation with James Yeager. He came to see us. He actually spent the week with us, a couple of days with us in June of this year. Rest in peace, James Yeager. And he told me when every time he raised his prices, and he's in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee, up there in Camden. And he said every time he raised, he said it's perceived value. He said, Aqil is perceived value. He said, every time I raise my prices, I got more students. But now he's also marketing, is doing a really good job. And whatever you think about the man, he could market. You know what I'm saying? And so he and I took that as good advice. James Yeager had a lot of good advice. He really did.
Yeah, you can disagree with him on a lot of things, but he knew how to market what he was selling.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, 5,000 a year.
Yeah, he knew how to market what he was selling.
Yeah.
And I never met him personally, to my knowledge. I was only in a room with him once, well, at one event over multiple days. I saw him thing. Had never even spoke with him. But I've had a chance to interact with some of his regular students, and I've been impressed with how good of students they are when they step out of his realm. and I very much appreciate that. And I know they're all mourning right now, you know, and for them, you know, that's who I feel for now. I'm not, from what little I know about James, I'm not going to sit here and woe is everything and act like I didn't know the man. But I know people who had a high value for them, and I know they're hurting right now. So I feel for them, and that's who I would like to express sympathy through tonight, or condolences.
Condolences to him. He exemplified that ethic. I mean, he sent his instructor cadre to us to become NRA instructor certified, and I didn't expect him to come. And he showed up with them, and the guy sat in the classroom and quiet and paid attention and asked questions and contributed. And if you see how he is in classes, anybody who's had him in the class will tell you the same thing over his whole career, is that you know that how they act is how he acts.
Yeah. All righty. Well, anything you would like to say in closing, Aqil?
Thanks for having us, brother. You know, I'm so glad I finally made it on Lee's show, and we
it only took like 6 invitations. I'm sorry.
And we and yeah, but you know, come check us out. We're Citizen Safety Academy. You know, citizensafety.com. Please, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, you know, we'll be in Cincinnati, and we're hoping to roll it out, do more classes in the future. But this will be the inaugural, and you know, anybody who's interested in this type of thing, please come hang out with us and have a good time.
All right. Tiffany.
We love you, Lee. And I feel like I've reached a milestone in my life by appearing on the Lee Weems podcast. That Weems guy is such a mentor and idol of mine that I just am feeling really all warm and fuzzy right now. And I'm so excited to have had the opportunity to be on your podcast. Well,
speaking of perceived value, I begged Tiffany for like 2 years to come teach a class through a local range. It won't work. All these, Tiffany, show up. I forget how I finally got her to do it. And we had to turn people away for the class, didn't we, Tiffany?
We did. That's true. I did not think it would sell, and it did.
It did.
We should do another one.
Yeah, we should. And all those other podcasts you've been on, like every other was just all preparation for you to be on the #1 podcast producer.
That's true. You know, I had to get lots of practice so that I could make sure I didn't let you down, let your listeners down, Lee.
Well, it is the #1 podcast that is produced and recorded in my kitchen.
That is true. That's quite the high honor.
That's right. Because, you know, it's not the only one that gets recorded here, but it's the only one produced and recorded here. All righty, folks. As you can tell, lots of nonsense abides when we get together. It gets even worse if you add Hearn and Murphy to the mix.
Oh my God.
It gets even worse. Because John wanted, Tiffany to explain all the things that she's learned from the Johnson in the show tonight. And those
the Johns.
The staff meetings, they tend to go on late into the night with not much business accomplished until Tiffany gets on to us about getting on track. So, kind of like the show tonight. And
there was a whole pre-show before the show, guys. It was interesting.
And I finally hit the record button when Tiffany told me it was time to hit the record button. She did it politely. All right. So with that, folks, we understand that your most important asset is your time. Thank you for choosing to spend it with us.